beautiful souls. Welcome back. I am so grateful to dig into today. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So I'm welcoming Brandi Murphy into the space. She is a master educator, neuroprogrammer, and empowerment coach, and she has inspired thousands of people to pursue a better life, a more soul-aligned life, right? And she's one of those people that has all of this knowledge that she brings into the space. So she's got this BA in psychobiology, which I think is amazing. I'd love to even tap into what does that even mean? And then the idea of it, she's got this master's degree in education. So she's got this beautiful background that melds all of these powerful experiences and knowledge and wisdom all together in ways of epigenetics, mind technology, quantum physics, natural health. And this is what gets her the powerful results that she has and that her clients have. And she's also, on top of all this, a mother who really deeply embraces unschooling. So she's teaching her children at home. I just can't wait to dig into the many facets of you, Brandi. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. I can't wait to dig in.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So very exciting.
Yeah, let's dig in. So I would love to just travel back in time. So the idea going back to 22, you're diagnosed with this rare form of thyroid cancer, and you go on this healing journey where it's like you're leaning into Western medicine and you feel like it keeps getting worse from what we were just discussing. It just kept getting worse. There's treatments and you're not feeling better and you're suddenly on 15 medications. You've got migraines. You've got doctors telling you can't have kids. So was there a moment in time where you realized, okay, this is not working for me. Enough is enough. Something has got to change.
Absolutely. So what's really interesting about my story is I had zero symptoms of cancer, right? And so we found my cancer completely by accident. I felt good. It was at a time in my life where I was just finishing my master's program. I was super excited about going out in the world, or at least I thought I was at that time, super excited about going out in the world and getting started. And when you're 22 years old, nobody thinks that they're going to get a phone call one day and say, you have cancer. In fact, I was driving, you have those moments where you remember exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing. I was driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike going probably 75 miles per hour when I got the phone call that told me I had cancer. And it was like, what do you do in that moment? We found it completely by accident. I happened to be traveling and got a little bit of a sinus infection, went to visit a urgent care center, and they were like, you have some bumps in your throat that you should have explored when you get home. So I go to my practitioner. They're like, don't worry, nobody your age ever gets thyroid cancer, but we should take a look at it. And next thing I know, 6 days later, my thyroid is being removed surgically. So I felt good until I had that surgery. And then they told me, once you have your surgery, we're going to support you with thyroid hormone replacements, as a medicine, and you're going to go right back to feeling normal. But that didn't happen. So over the course of the next 6 years, every time I'd go to a doctor, I'd have a new symptom and they'd give me a new diagnosis. My patient chart became, miles thick. And I had all these different diagnoses, and every diagnosis came with a new prescription. That new prescription came with a new side effect, specialist after specialist after specialist. And I literally got to a point, I was about 27 years old, where I was like, I've been sick now for almost 6 years. And if I feel like this at my mid-20s, my mid to late 20s, what's it going to be like when I'm in my 40s? What's it going to be like when I'm in my 60s? I don't want to live life like this anymore. I got so sick and tired of being sick and tired that I was like, this isn't working for me. I have to do something different. And through all the specialists, all the appointment visits, not one time did a practitioner ask me about how I was eating, how I was dealing with stress, what my relationships were like in my life, how I was sleeping. It was just, they would talk to me about my symptom, they would prescribe a medication to me, and then they would send me on my way. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners may have been through something like that, or somebody in their family has been through something like that, where the conventional system is all about diagnosing and prescribing. It's really a sick care system, but it oftentimes does not truly promote health. And so I felt like even though I was a conventional patient in the healthcare system, nothing about it was healthy. So I started exploring all the different alternatives. I was going to a chiropractor, massage therapist, acupuncture, and all of those things would help me temporarily with my symptoms, but I realized I wasn't getting to the root cause of what was causing my problem. So I was on this journey of trying out supplementation, changing my diet, trying to meditate, trying to do all the affirmations about health. And I found that sometimes I'd move a little bit forward, like one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two step back. And I
Yeah.
realized it had to be a holistic approach to it. I had to not just do one thing. There was no one solution, but I had to embrace all of them. And really the turning point was I found a product that was isotonic in nature, and it was meant to be better absorbed by the body.
Mhm.
And I took that one product, and all of a sudden, even though I was like kind of giving up on the idea of supplements because nothing had worked for me and I had tried so many of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, one more thing, I'm going to just try it. And 3 days later, I started feeling better, but I
Mhm.
didn't believe that it was that. So I went off of it when I ran out of the first bottle. And 3 days later, my symptoms all came back. So I realized, okay, something is going on where this product worked and nothing else did. And I realized it was able to get through the intestinal barrier and get into the bloodstream where a lot of the other products weren't. And so now looking back, right, like I truly believe you can't connect the dots when you're in the moment, but when you look back and you see how the dots connect, it all
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right.
All of my symptoms were tied to inflammation. The migraines were related to inflammation. The joint pain was related to inflammation. The chronic allergies was related to inflammation. The food allergies were related to inflammation. The rheumatoid arthritis was related to inflammation. And all of the medications I were on were addressed, to address a symptom here and a symptom here. But it wasn't until I really embraced an anti-inflammatory diet, supported my body's inflammatory response with supplements, focused on making sure that I was trying to minimize environmental toxins as much as possible, that the inflammation was able to calm down. And when the inflammation calmed down, then everything else just kind of fell to the side.
Mm.
So I went through a period once I figured this out, where within 6 months, I was able to get myself off of all but 2 of the 15 prescriptions that I was on. Now, the 2 were thyroid hormones. I will have to take those for the rest of my life because I do not any longer have a thyroid. But I started feeling so good that people started saying, well, what are you doing? We haven't seen you in a couple of years. You've been sick all of the time. And now you're able to be social again. You're out with us. We're able to do things together. What did you do? So I started teaching other people how to manage their inflammation through diet and supplementation and lifestyle. And it led to this really beautiful business where I was just helping so many other people. When I figured out what worked with me, I couldn't help but share it with others. And
Yeah.
then I was getting results with them too. But the part that was really frustrating is when I'd go back to my doctors and I'd say, I'm no longer taking these medications. I feel great. I feel better than I have in years. They told me it can't be that. You need to be on the medications. It can't be these supplements. It can't be this diet. Those things don't work. And I got angry. I was like, how can you tell me they don't work? I'm living proof that they work. Like, I'm just telling you how I feel better than I've felt in years, and you're going to tell me it doesn't work. So I literally got angry,
Mhm.
and I felt like, okay, well, I can either stew about it, and that only impacts me. That doesn't make anything better
Mhm.
for anyone else, or I can commit to change it. And I started partnering with practitioners who were open-minded to go beyond the standard of care and to be able to educate their patients on healthy lifestyles. And that kind of became my mission. Like, I'm going to teach doctors how to look at the patient holistically instead of these silos of health where
Yeah.
they focus on one system of the body. And so I started that business in 2004. And it's been a really, really incredible journey that I just love. So my takeaway to your audience is, if you are in that conventional medical system where you've tried all these different things and you've been to all the specialists and you've been on all the medications, and they're not talking to you about your diet, they're not talking to you about your relationships, they're not talking to you about, how you deal with stress and how you sleep, it may be time to find a different practitioner. Like, we don't have to be stuck in the conventional model. There are really good practitioners out there that want more for their patients and are willing to invest the time in it. You just have to find them. They're everywhere. We have some really great practitioners out there, but so many times people, they pick a doctor off of a list that their insurance company gives them, or because they're close to their house and they think that's their only option. And I'm going to encourage you, you have to be your own best advocate. You have to be willing to say, I deserve more. And I'm a whole person, and I want to be treated as a whole person and not just a thyroid, or not just my joints, or not just my cardiovascular system. So there's so many really great practitioners out there. You just might have to sort through. And I interview practitioners, and I before I go to see one, I want to find out, are they willing to treat the whole patient, or are they kind of stuck in, what I used to call the traditional model. Now I call it the conventional model because there's nothing traditional
Mhm.
about our current medical system, right?
Yeah.
There's just not.
Yeah. So there's so much here, but I really want, so if there's someone who's listening that's like, great, what do I Google? How do I find this practitioner? What does someone Google to find someone in their area to find a practitioner? And how did you also set up these calls where you're interviewing the practitioners too? Like, I'm thinking for myself, like, that sounds great. And how do I actually logistically do that? What does that process look like?
It's becoming more and more prevalent for practitioners to look at the whole body, and so
Yeah.
there's a new group of practitioners that specialize in lifestyle medicine.
Mhm.
It's a relatively new field, a relatively new specialty of medicine, but that's where I would start. If you could find a lifestyle medicine practitioner in your area, I would start there. If you
Yeah.
can't find a lifestyle medicine practitioner, look for a functional medicine practitioner because that's been around a little bit longer. There's a lot more functional medicine specialists, but what they're going to look at is kind of how do all the systems in the body work together instead of looking at it in the silos of a cardiovascular person, a joint person, a gastroenterologist, a stomach and digestive health person. They kind of start with digestion and they go from there because the entry point to our body is our digestive system, and it helps us do everything. And so I would look for somebody that's kind of a functional medicine practitioner that focuses on digestion first.
Mhm.
And then for interviewing, I like to look at their website first, and I like to follow them on social media and see what are they talking about. Are they talking about anything related to true health, or do they only promote the standard of care, which
Yeah.
is, they're legally bound to the standard of care, but we want people that go above the standard of care. And those types of people would be sharing on social media how they're passionate about helping their patients achieve optimal wellness. That's kind of where I would look. And then when I call them, you don't often get the practitioner on the phone, but you do get a staff member, and you can say to them, like, what kind of services do they provide? And do they offer any nutritional counseling? Do they talk to patients about food allergies? Do they work on hormone balancing? Because all of these things are very interconnected. And those staff members would be able to answer yes or no to that.
I love this. Okay, so this feels very tangible, very easy, and this is something I'm gonna use in my own life. I think this is so powerful. So thank you for just the empowering language and the ease of even just like the process of how do I do that. So powerful. And what I think is beautiful about all the things that you were saying is this idea of, it sounds like, especially through this whole body experience, you're looking at the body, you're looking at the mind, and the other part I really want to dig into here is like, I believe the body is telling the story of the soul based on everything that I've studied. And what's true for me is that I believe the soul is trying to communicate to us. Sometimes it's the intuition, it's very quiet, it's the whisper, right? Of kind of like hey, start doing this. Your Dharma is actually this. Follow that path, release that person. They're not in alignment with you. Release that job, follow this breadcrumb, right? And it's soft, and then sometimes we don't actually trust it, right? And then it gets louder and louder and louder until it's the brick across the face is what one of my mentors says. And to me, I believe sometimes that's the body where
Yeah.
suddenly it's showing up on the MRI scan. So I'm curious, what do you think that your body was trying to communicate to you? Because there's always a root versus, like you said, the symptoms. And we think about, Louise Hay, the emotional causes for the physical ailments.
Yeah.
What do you think your body was trying to communicate to you through the thyroid?
Well, it's so fascinating. And I'm with you 100% on that. I
Yeah.
totally believe that the body's giving us signs and signals every day, all day
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
But we are taught to ignore it, right? And we're
Right.
taught to just, from a very young age, something doesn't feel right. And you're like, oh, you'll be fine.
Right.
And people are taught to ignore those signs. And I do feel like when you start ignoring the signs, they get bigger and bigger and bigger until there is like an explosion that you cannot ignore, which is exactly what's going on here. For
Yeah.
me, when I was diagnosed with my thyroid, two very interesting things about the thyroid. I grew up in central Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
not far from 3 Mile Island. And for those of you who are not familiar, in 1979, there was a partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island. And the media for a very long time said that there was no radiation exposure, there was no radiation escape. Recently, they've come out and they provide a little bit more information about that. But the thyroid is very sensitive to radiation, so much so that after that, people within a 20-mile radius of the nuclear power plant were given iodine tablets, which can help saturate the thyroid so it's not as sensitive to radiation. They were given them in case of emergency, so that if there was ever an emergency again, they were supposed to take the radioiodine tablet to prevent any thyroid disruption. Well, I was 3 years old approximately when the incident happened. And the type of cancer I had, the only known cause was exposure to radiation, either in childhood or in very high doses as an adult. Things like Chernobyl, like people around Chernobyl had this type of thyroid cancer. But it's a very rare type of cancer unless you're exposed to it. So there were 8 other girls my age diagnosed the same day that I was. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theory around that. A lot of people will not mention that there's an exposure there or that there's a connection there. I truly believe there is a connection there. So there's the environmental side of it, right? Like I was exposed to something that helped to trigger this. But what made it come out exactly when it came out is I was just finishing up a master's program in physical therapy. I was going to be continuing on to my doctorate in physical therapy. And I really didn't love physical therapy. I thought I would, but I didn't. And my parents had invested so much into it and they were so supportive and so excited for me. And it's not that they ever said, don't tell us you're not happy about it. But there was something inside of me that was not allowing me to speak my truth about what I really wanted to do. And I was struggling, right? Like I had just gone down this path, didn't want to continue down this path, but didn't want to tell anybody about it. So I'm holding back my truth.
Yes.
You know anything about the chakras? Your throat chakra is right by your thyroid, right? It's kind of like represented by your thyroid. And when you're not speaking your truth, you can create physical issues in the thyroid or the esophagus or the throat. So there's a lot of really unique or interesting, again, those dots. I didn't connect the dots then, but looking back now, it makes perfect sense that my illness manifested in my thyroid at a time in my life when I wasn't speaking my truth.
Yes.
So if you're listening and you're having thyroid issues, whether it's hyperactive, underactive, Graves' disease, hypothyroidism, I want you to really dig into that a little bit and think about, is there a place in your life where you're not speaking your truth? Are you possibly double-minded? And what I mean by that is an idea comes or a thought comes to your head, but what comes out of your mouth is something different because you're filtering what you actually want to say for fear of either offending somebody or upsetting somebody. And are you holding back those words? Because doing that can really create energy disturbance in the throat chakra.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because have you ever seen the movie Oppenheimer?
Yes.
Okay. So I saw the movie too, and this is not a spoiler alert. When you didn't see it, but I'm witnessing him holding back his truth, like left, right, not speaking his truth, not allowing himself, all these people telling him to stop talking, not allowed to say that, da, 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 da. And for whatever reason, the shaman in me, just the curious person in me was like, how did he die? And I ended up looking it up and it's like, oh, he had throat cancer. He never spoke his truth. He never opened up to the possibility of being able to do that through the miracle of shifting the energy there. Because what I believe is happening, it's just calcified energy telling a story. The second we know what that story is, it moves.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, yeah.
It's just, it's there to say, hey, look at me. I've got something to communicate to you. Thank you for listening. I release. Right.
And it can even happen, you know, the thyroid is a really kind of extreme example, but this happens in our lives all the time. I mean, there's 2 weeks ago, I sprained my ankle, right?
Yeah.
Total random accident.
Yeah.
I'm in the yard, the dog's running with me, he's get the zoomies. And next thing I know, he's zooming at me before I can get out of the way. And I'm like the bowling pin and he's the bowling ball and I go flying.
Okay.
Come down, right? Sprain my ankle. When you stop and think about it, right? Like the ankles, the feet, they carry us forward in life. And when you're not moving forward in the direction that you want to, or if you're holding yourself back from moving in the direction you want to, you can end up with feet and ankle problems, right? And even when they seem to come out of nowhere, it's probably because right before that, I got an idea, one of those really great ideas that wake you up in the middle of the night and you're like, I need to act on this. But then sit down to start acting on it and everybody else's needs come first. The email comes in that directs your attention. You don't take action on what you knew you were supposed to take action on, right? Because you were given a divine message. That thought that came to you in a dream or in the middle of the night is God telling you, or the universe telling you, like, maybe you should do this because it's going to do something really great for you. But you hold yourself back. You don't take that action. And next thing you know, life gets in the way. You say, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow you do something else. And then it doesn't feel as exciting. So you don't take as much action with it. And
Yep.
2 weeks go by, you haven't done anything with it. And boom, you sprain your ankle, seemingly unrelated, but it's your body saying, pay attention. There's
Yeah.
something you're meant to do and you're not doing it right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So this is so powerful because I too, I know that my body is speaking the language of my soul. So when something's happening, I'm like, okay, I'll place my hand in that area of the body and I'm like, what message do you have for me? And then I'll just wait and listen. And I know we've talked about this before too. Louise Hay,
Yeah.
amazing book. It's a great place to start. It's heal your body from A to Z, or even just heal your body. But I really like the A to Z because it's a great place to start to say, what is the emotional reason for a physical ailment?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a really powerful way to just say, like, what is the ankle telling me?
Right.
Right? And what is the thyroid telling me and things of that nature. So for someone who might be like, amazing, but where do I start? That's a really powerful resource.
A really powerful resource.
Yeah.
Another one that takes it a little
Yeah.
step further. I've been trained by Dr. Bradley Nelson, who wrote a program called the Emotion Code. And then there's
Mm.
multiple levels to it. One is called the Emotion Code. The next level is the Body Code. And the third level is the Belief Code, which he recently just came out with. But Emotion Code teaches you to use muscle testing. And there's multiple ways of doing it. But the way that I do it is I just create rings with my fingers, like, create these rings. And a yes is a very strong, like I can't, when I'm saying yes, or when there's something true, like a truth is coming through, my rings stay locked. If I
Yeah.
say no,
Yeah.
they come across, they break very easily, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll ask my body, are you telling me this? Are you telling me that? Or if there's a specific emotion I think I'm feeling, I'll test it to see, is it that emotion? And once you identify the emotion, you don't have to relive it. You just release it, right? And so you just put the intention in to release the emotion, because emotion means energy in motion, and
Yeah.
we are emotional beings where energy is flowing through us all the time. And our emotions are nothing more than energy that is vibrating at a specific frequency. And when we allow ourselves to feel that emotion, it leaves very quickly.
Yes.
But again, we were taught not to feel our emotion. We were told it's okay. Just, like we push our emotions down. And when
Yeah.
we push them down and we don't allow ourselves to feel them, the energy of that motion gets stuck. And
Yep.
when stuck energy is in our body, it creates illness, it creates disease, it creates pain, it creates inflammation, it creates all of these different things. So we can have all these trapped emotions in our body, that all it takes is identifying them, acknowledging them, putting the intention to release them, and everything changes.
Yes. 1,000%. So the thing I wanted to share to anyone who may be listening in and not watching, the rings that she was just doing, it's the middle finger and the thumb on the right hand, middle finger and thumb on the left hand. You place them together like two rings and you pull them. And if they stop, if they don't break, that's a yes. If they do break apart, that's a no. So just to share to someone who may be listening in, like, rings, what's happening? So hopefully that's helping too, of just kind of, that's one way of muscle testing, and asking your body those questions of saying, like, what message do you have for me? And getting more specific,
Yeah.
right? Of like, are you trying to communicate this? No. Okay. Are you trying to communicate that? Yes. So it's kind of you starting to decode, soul, what are you trying to communicate to me? Oh, that idea that I got at 3 a.m. matters for myself, my family, for the collective. It's time for me to go. Okay, thank you. And then your body can start to heal itself even more, saying, she got the message. We can release all the pain now. We can release all the, all the things that were there that were calcifying in that space. It's kind of cool to think about how the body is a puzzle piece, right? If it's calcifying in the thyroid, it's telling you something different from if it's calcifying in the gut, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's cool, is starting to understand the specifics of, like, what is this area of the body trying to speak to me through? And to your point, it has a very deep correlation to the energy centers that are in alignment with that too, right?
Uh-huh.
So powerful, the chakras that are moving up the body and what each of those energy centers are trying to tell you, whether they're misaligned or wanting to come back into alignment and expand too.
Yeah.
Powerful.
It's so interesting because it can also show up as, these trapped energies in our body can show up as blockages in our relationships. They can
Yeah.
show up as blockages in our business. Let's talk about those really quickly. Um,
Yes.
we can create, and this also comes from the Emotion Code. So another great, book. I would tell everybody, get You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and get the
Yes.
Emotion Code by Bradley Nelson.
Hmm.
But Bradley Nelson talks about the heart wall. And so when we have all these trapped emotions, our subconscious mind creates a wall around our heart that's for protection. Like nobody wants to have a broken heart. And when we have heartache, it doesn't feel good. So our body and our mind say, we're going to do whatever we can to protect that from happening again. So we take the energy of these emotions and we kind of build a wall around them. And I'm going to use the example of, imagine if your heart was surrounded by a thorn bush, right? Even though beautiful things can come out of that thorn bush, like a heart, like a rose, there are
Mhm.
still thorns there. And if I'm sending you love, Christina, and my energy of my love is trying to get through a thorn bush between me and you to get there, by the time it gets to you, it's going to be kind of like battered and torn, and it's not going to have the same energetic signature as what I intended to come to you, right? So
Yeah.
if we have a heart wall that are, when we're trying to receive emotions, those emotions get beat up on the way there. We interpret people's signals they're sending to us differently than they intended. And that
Mm.
impacts our communication with them. And even though they may be very well intended, we receive it differently than they intended and we feel hurt by it. So
Mhm.
sometimes even our own protective mechanism ends up hurting us. It's not them hurting us. It's
Right.
us hurting us through our protection. And so we want to clear away any of the energies that are causing that heart wall so that we can truly feel what people are sending to us. And the love that we're trying to send to them can get to them
Mm.
as well, unshattered, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so there's that. And then also it can impact your business. And
Yes.
this is how, I mentioned to you in 2004, I started with the nutrition side of my business and it was going really well. But this thing kept happening where I knew what I needed to do, but I wasn't always doing it. Or I'd start to develop momentum in my business and then I'd, for some reason, slack off. I'd stop following up with people and I'd start achieving new levels of success and then sabotage it. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people do that when they're starting out. And so
Yeah.
I started looking at, why am I sabotaging myself? Again, it's these dots. You don't recognize them at the time, but when you look backwards, it makes total sense.
Yes.
And it was because my new business was creating a financial windfall for me that I wasn't comfortable with because I didn't see myself as successful. It wasn't truly a part of my identity yet. And
Mm.
so when I would feel uncomfortable because it was new, I would back off to pull myself back into my comfort zone.
Right.
So I started trying to figure out, okay, I figured out the health part. I've got myself healthy. Now I want to get myself out of my financial bind. And why am I sabotaging myself when I'm getting success to do that? So I ended up going to a seminar in the Bahamas. It was a 2-week seminar in the Bahamas that was marketed all about learning how to use more of your mind so that you could be better in business and have better relationships. Well, when I got there, um, little did I know that it was really a spiritual event that I was going to. It was
Yeah.
all about remembering who you are and connecting to your source and connecting to your truth. What's fascinating to me about that is I was at a point in my life where I was still coming off of the cancer treatment. I was still a little angry. I
Mhm.
didn't see myself as a spiritual person yet because I was like, why did I have to go through all of this? And there was some anger there, like, why did you do this to me? Why me?
Yeah.
But when I got there and the layers started being peeled back as to why do you believe in these limitations?
Mm.
Let's get you to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. And we
Mm.
were doing all of these meditations on the beach and we were doing all of these exercises. I really remembered who I was. And there were some really profound moments. And it wasn't until I did that I was able to kind of like release some of the energies that were stored in my body that were blocking me from having better relationships, both in business and in my personal life. And that's kind of how I transitioned from being, I don't want to say just a nutrition person, to a truly holistic person that looks at the physical side through the nutrition and diet and lifestyle, but also the energetic side with our emotions and our energy and how that impacts our DNA. Because it does impact our DNA. Those environmental, there were other people that grew up in the area that I grew up with who didn't develop the same type of cancer I did, even though we were exposed to the same thing,
Right.
because my energetic DNA was opening me up to have that illness where
Right.
maybe wasn't. There's so much to unpack in that, but so many
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, how has that, so you think about bringing in the spirituality, the energy work into what was then, focused mainly on nutrition. How has that made a huge impact on your business, on your life, on your client results? Like, how has that really shifted your business and everything related to that, your own clients and yourself?
It really shifted everything because I started helping people understand that you have all these limiting beliefs in you right now that aren't yours. You're carrying these burdens from people that had influence on your life when you were a young child that were probably trying to protect you, but impacted you by creating fear of moving forward, right? And it can be something as simple. The wildest example would be like, you're a little kid and you're in your walker, you're maybe 3 years old, 2 years old, 3 years old, and your mom sees a spider and your mom like freaks out and screams in the spider. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden now you're afraid of spiders because you look up to your mom and she just had this freak out that impacted you because it made you scared.
Yeah.
And even though you weren't scared of spiders before that, now that one incident made you scared of spiders.
Yes.
Could be something as simple as being afraid of strangers because your parents, when they were trying to protect you, don't talk to strangers. And
Yeah.
now you're an introvert, afraid to talk to other people
Right.
because you have this fear that strangers are going to hurt you that you took on when you were very little.
Yeah.
Um, you were little in a car and you're driving through a neighborhood and you're like, look at that beautiful house. And your parents are like, keep dreaming. Those houses are really expensive. And that one little belief made
Right.
you think you're not worthy of having that particular house. Right. So there's so many things, there's so many different parts of that I help people uncover. What are the limiting beliefs that are holding you back? And let's take a look of where did that come from? Because
Yeah.
the odds are it is a projection of somebody else's fear that
Yeah.
was passed on to you, and you realize that it was based on either misinterpretation, a misunderstanding, or an outright lie that they were carrying, right?
Yeah.
And they could only do with what this goes back to Louise Hay. Louise Hay says, look at your parents as if they were a scared 6-year-old doing the best that they can. And
Mhm.
so they may have put fears on you unintentionally. They didn't do it on purpose. It's just
Right.
they were carrying those fears and passed them on to you. So funny story about that. In the Bahamas, we were sent out to do a meditation exercise on the beach where we were asked, and I'm going to ask everybody to think about this for a second. We were asked to go out on the beach and look at the beach with what I'm going to call virgin eyes, meaning pretend you have never been on a beach before. Because when you go out and you look at a beach, all of your previous memories of experiences on that beach are still in your head, and you're looking through goggles of your past experience when you're looking at that beach. So when you're looking at the beach in front of you, you're filtering it almost through like the TV screen of your childhood experiences on the beach, and you may not actually see what's there. Because if you really saw what's there, you would see all the energy that's holding everything together. Like you would see the energy that the wind is moving the waves. You would see the birds flying on the energy. You would see the sand moving in the wind and the waves. And you would see it with eyes of wonder instead of just like taking for granted that you know what a beach is. And if you don't live near a beach, I'm going to encourage you to go outside somewhere in your area to some place that you view as pretty.
Yeah.
And I want you to sit down and pretend like it's the very first time that you're there and get all of your senses involved in it. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you taste? What do you smell? Get all of your senses involved in it and stop thinking about it from your past experience there. But like, if you've never seen this spot before, what does it feel like to be there? What do you smell when you're sitting there? What do you taste? Pull all of your senses in and just allow yourself to be there for a minute and quiet your mind and
Yeah.
listen to what your body is telling you.
Yeah.
So I did this in the Bahamas when I'm on that seminar. And I started to get a little bit of annoyed because this guy kept coming up to me and talking to me, and he introduced himself and his name was Adolfo. And I'm like, dude, I'm supposed to be doing this exercise. Can you leave me alone? But he starts asking me questions like, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Pennsylvania. And he responds, Transylvania? And I said, no, Pennsylvania. And he goes, oh, there's a lot of energy vampires there. Now, that was kind of like very interesting because in the seminar, we were talking about how sometimes people in your life pull energy out of you and they zap your energy. And so I'm not thinking like Dracula type vampire, but the type
Yeah.
of person that just
Yeah.
drains your energy. We had just been talking about that in the seminar. And this guy who's picking up trash on the beach is like, there's a lot of energy vampires where you live. maybe you should protect yourself from that. Really tied in with what we were talking about. So I want you guys to think about who are the energy vampires in your life and who maybe need to pull your energy back from, that's draining you from moving forward with what you really want to create. But he started also talking about, tell me about this exercise you're supposed to be doing. And I said, well, we're supposed to be looking for the beauty on the beach. And he's like, well, look around you. Beauty is everywhere if you only choose to see it. And so I ended up talking to this guy for about 45 minutes. The session was ended. We were supposed to go back in and explain what we saw on the beach to the rest of the group. And as I'm talking to the rest of the group, no one else saw me talking to this guy. Like, this guy just was this guide that appeared and seemed to know about all the things we were talking about on the seminar and drive home all the lessons about that we don't allow ourselves to see the beauty and the opportunity that's right in front of us. We don't allow ourselves to see what's really there because we're constantly looking through our past experience, which colors how we see it. And so if we can take those goggles off and really see what's in front of us, we're going to hear what our body's telling us better. We're going to have better relationships, and we're going to be able to see the opportunities that are presenting themselves to us every single day that could completely transform our lives. But sometimes we don't allow ourselves to see it because we're stuck by our past experience.
So this is an exercise in really looking at things brand new and really allowing ourselves to say, okay, wow, let me look at the intricacies. I remember doing this in my backyard, actually, something very similar, where this is when I started to really connect to what is abundance. And I was like, there is so much happening in this backyard. There is a bug here, and inside of that bug, there is a universe happening. All of the little intricacies that are built within this tiny little bug, there's an entire universe happening. And there are thousands of bugs in my backyard, potentially. I don't even know. It's a big backyard. I saw lots of like butterflies and flies and, wasp or whatever it was. So I'm seeing them kind of fly around, and I'm looking at all the trees and all the trees beyond and all the trees beyond. And I'm thinking, there's so much abundance everywhere in between, smaller and smaller and smaller. There's a universe within that. And then you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's a universe all around me. And so it's this idea of like, it's almost like I was looking at my backyard for the first time completely differently, at like the intricacies and the beauty of a fly, and it was like all of a sudden things were unlocking where I realized there's abundance everywhere, even in the simplest places, that we can unlock by just being present for the first time, taking off the colored glasses, the rose colored glasses, or whatever color we're looking at through, and just taking a minute to say, wait a minute, what does this really look like to me today? And like focusing on those senses, I think, is so powerful. And what I love too, that you were just speaking into, is the spirit guide that came in when you let yourself be deeply present. This spirit guide came in and was just reiterating all of these messages. And it sounds like it came through so powerfully and strongly that you were like, no, this is a real being. Like, this person is actually annoying and right next to me, and like, wow, okay, like just go on. But like at the same time, you're like, you receive such profound messages, and what a beautiful validation to have received that, to share it in community of people, to say, you weren't actually speaking out loud. You received really powerful downloads. And so just that beautiful reminder to it, like when we get really present and we let ourselves come inward, it is an opportunity for us to connect to the spiritual messages and allow them to filter through us. And if you're going to do this exercise and you are wanting to open yourself up to those messages, I would encourage you to say, I'm opening and protecting my lines of communication for only that is for my highest good and of the highest vibration, right? Because we don't want any messages to come through. We want it to be highest good and highest vibration.
Yeah.
And I do both, because sometimes highest good doesn't feel good. It's like the learning through the health scare too. It's like, oh, it's for my highest good, but that didn't really feel good. I want it to be of the highest vibration too. I want to learn through love. So I would definitely set that intention if you want to connect to your spirit guide, because there is just so much wisdom there. And I love that you're breathing that into the space.
And I just love it so much. There's so much symbolism too, because like he was taking out the trash, right? And just even the symbolism of that, this guy cleaning out the trash. And that's what I needed to do. I needed to get rid of all of the junk, the lies that people had put on me as a child. And well-intentioned, I'm not angry at them, right? Like I don't hold them in contempt for it. It's just, it's part of the human experience. And we are put here to experience the whole range of emotions. We just don't allow ourselves to do it. And so I'm going to also encourage people to feel into it a little bit. It can be slightly uncomfortable, but you don't have to relive the whole experience. Let the energy go. It's not serving you anymore.
Yeah,
And that opens up for all the newness and the exciting feel good energy to come in.
absolutely. That forgiveness is a huge component of all of the healing. They always say it's like being angry is taking the poison and expecting the other person to die, which we all
Exactly.
know never works.
And never work.
Yeah, it's the idea of being like, why am I poisoning myself? If I'm experiencing anger, I'm poisoning myself. Now, it's not to say poison is bad. It's to say recognize the poison. Okay, it's here and love on it. Start to release it. Start to say like, I actually don't want you to take up residency anymore. I don't want to keep taking it every single day. I don't want to go to bed angry. I don't want to wake up angry, right? Like I want to be able to just release this with so much love and kindness and to remember, like you said, our parents being the 6-year-old wounded child that's doing the best that they can, that puts things into such beautiful perspective of just being like, I appreciate you for doing the best that you could because I know that that was the best that you could do at that moment in time. I forgive you. I release you. I love you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And now one of the other things that I love that has come out of that is for the longest time I was told I wouldn't be able to have children. And so then when I did clear all the junk out and I healed my body and healed myself, it's always a work in progress, right? So I do not have a thyroid. There's going to be times where my body adjusts well to my medicine and doesn't work well with my medicine. So it ebbs and flows. And I always have to listen for, okay, what is your body telling you now? Now we need to do something a little bit different. But I wanted my kids, when I did have them, to understand this from a very early age. I didn't want them to wait until, they're a teenager or in college and have to go back. Personal development space is so big because so many of us are dealing with these challenges from our childhood. So I wanted to be able to raise my kids in a way where I tell them from the beginning, you're capable of so much and
Yeah.
you have magic inside of you. And when you figure out what your magic is telling you, you're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. But I want you to listen to your body now. And so that kind of led me to the unschooling route where I'm a former school teacher. I taught in public school for a long time. Never would I have thought that I would have unschooled my own kids. But once I went through this journey, I wanted to be able to raise my kids in this energy where they're learning how to feed themselves well, how to eat properly, how to be a healthy person holistically, how to address their emotions, how to feel their emotions, how to express their emotions so that they can continue moving forward. And so we do raise our kids this way from home. And it's super exciting to be able to see them growing like this. Like we do so many fun things like forest walks as part of their schooling and learning how to communicate with the food that we make. They grow mushrooms. They
Yeah.
make their own herbal medicines. And, there's so many different fun things about how once I figured out how to make this work for me, teaching my clients with it, teaching my kids with it, and being able to share with others. There's just different ways of being out there that there's so many opportunities. We don't have to feel stuck.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that. How have you made it work? I got this intuitive ping like you actually can have it all. You can have the children and the successful career. And I have been waking up to this more and more. I've been even toying with the idea of unschooling, right? So I'm really fascinated that as a previous school teacher, you were like, I'm making this choice so that they can really find the magic and the medicine within themselves versus,
Yeah,
receiving something and just being asked to memorize things that might not work together and it doesn't really foster independent thinking.
right.
Right. So I'm curious, how have you, as someone with this beautifully successful business, made it work to also support with unschooling your children, bringing them on these nature walks, teaching them about, herbs and things of that nature? How have you made it work?
So I don't know if you've ever seen the video. There's a video of like the big rocks versus the sand and the water. And you take like imagine a big empty jar. And
Yeah.
in front of you, you have a bucket of big rocks, a bucket of gravel, a bucket of sand, and a bucket of water. And your job is to try to fit all of the things into the empty bucket that you have. And if you start by putting the small things in first, right, you can never fit it all in. But if you start by putting the big rocks in first, and then you put the gravel in and you shake it, and then you put the sand in and you shake it, and then you put the water in and you shake it, there's a way where you can fit it all in. But you have to prioritize the big rocks, and then the smaller pieces fill in where they need to. So my big rocks are my family time. And so when I'm building out my schedule, I put in dedicated time with the family first. And then my work is the gravel that goes in between. And I fit my work in wherever I can around the big rocks. So what does that look like in real life? Well, my boys right now are almost 11 and almost 13, and they're very active in sports, and they homeschool and all of the things. So I set a time, I put all of their activities into my schedule first.
Yeah.
And then I schedule my meetings via Zoom. I'm a digital business owner, so most of my meetings happen via Zoom, although I do a lot of speaking engagements on the weekends too. So starting in the week, I'll schedule my Zooms around when I have to be somewhere with the kids. So my work hours are not your typical 9 to 5. I'll do some sessions in the evening. I'll do some sessions very early, but I fit them around where they are. Some of them will take place from the car at the baseball field while the kids are at practice.
Yeah.
Some of them will take place, at wherever they have to be for their activities. I'll take them there, and I might step away for 15 to 20 minutes to do a work call, but I can still be with them the rest of the time. I just took them on a trip that I went to a trip to be with my mastermind family in Fort Lauderdale. And it's not always easy. I will say that it's not always easy, but it's the priority. So I commit to it. So I wanted to be on this mastermind, and it required me going to Fort Lauderdale on a Monday. And my husband happens to be traveling internationally right now. So there was nobody to be home with the kids. We don't live where we're close to our family, where I have a support system of babysitters. So I had to look at, okay, either I don't go, or I take the kids with me and we turn it into an adventure. So we spent family time together in Fort Lauderdale on the weekend. I had my brother come in and watch the kids on Monday while I was at the meeting. And then we spent family time together when we were there Tuesday. And then we came home. So the big rocks were us being together as a family. The pebbles and the gravel were the meetings that I had to be in and the phone calls that I had to take in between sessions. But when you put the big rocks first, it can all fit together.
And what's so powerful is you're connecting to your values, and therefore you're attracting clients that simultaneously honor and are in alignment with those values, because you're not going to attract it. And once you know that, once you know what your big rocks are, you're attracting now and people that are like, I get it. Family first. I love my family. I'm so grateful that you're creating time for that. Of course, we can be flexible here. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Or, looking ahead, let's do it this way. So I think that's what's so powerful, is like really recognizing, what are my values, and knowing that everything that you're now sourcing into your reality is in alignment with that. The clients that get it, that can move around into that, and that also are simultaneously like, that sounds great. I also am prioritizing something similar. So I think that's so powerful. And it's really validating in my own body to hear, because I kept getting that intuitive ping where I got this message where I realized, Will was in school, because there was a part of me that was thinking and still connecting to that, 9 to 5, we're working. So it was like he was at school, even young, 8 to 5. And all of a sudden I got this ping like, oh my God, someone else is raising my child. Like, that doesn't work for me anymore. I don't want to just see him at meal times. Like, and thinking about his subconscious mind and how it's being programmed by people that I don't even know if I want them to program my child in that way, So I got this ping where I was like, wow, I'm restructuring my entire day. I used to take calls later in the day. Now he's just doing, 8 to 2:30, which is fun because it's a very conscious school. It's like this Montessori method. So I believe in what they're doing. He loves it. He's surrounded by people that he loves. And so it works for now.
Right.
But I got this ping, like, restructure your entire day so that you're the one picking him up at 2:30. So you're spending the rest of the afternoon with him, right? So you can really prioritize it in that way. And, it will evolve as I evolve, but I got a very similar ping where it was like, no, this isn't working anymore. You get to shift it. And so to your point, it will work when we value it and prioritize it and figure out ways to make it work. And the people that are in alignment with you will stick around with you. And those that aren't will fall away. And that's okay, because our businesses and ourselves evolve as we evolve, right?
Exactly.
So
And there could be a transition period. Like, you may not be able to jump right from working 9 to 5 to the way that I live, right? There's a saying, don't compare your chapter 20 to somebody else's, chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20, right? It took a while for me to build that into place.
Right.
But where could somebody start that's working a traditional kind of job right now and wants to do something different, is maybe start 2 or 3 hours a week of building something of your own on social media and building a following and building maybe a coaching business. There's some sort of knowledge that you have right now that is your life experience, that there's other people out there going through what you've already been through, and they need help, and they are looking for somebody to guide them through it that's already been there. And you could be the person that could help them if you just shared your story. And so I think anybody could become a coach at something and be able to create a digital business where they're coaching people through what they wish they knew when they were struggling. And so you could create a very part-time digital business that then allows you to have other options. And eventually you'll be able to create the life exactly the way that you want it and put your big rocks where you want them to be. Even if it's not right this second, if you start putting that out to the universe, that this is what you want to create, the opportunities will start presenting themselves to you to be able to manifest it.
Oh my gosh, that has been my experience completely. I was in marketing for 15 years, kept, going up the corporate ladder, marketing director, great salary. And I just remember being like, this isn't it. And so what I did is similar to exactly what you said. I started to figure out, well, what would light me up? And I built it on the side like a passion project.
Exactly.
Where I was, what if I just started sharing online about my story? What if I just told a bunch of people that I, learned about this and I want to share it? And then all of a sudden through connections, I got my first client and things of that nature. And then it became, now I'm doing it full time, and then it scales, and then you make more money. And then all of a sudden you're living your Dharma full time, right? And in alignment with your values, and you can't have it all,
Yeah.
right?
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. It's like follow the breadcrumbs, follow what
Mhm.
lights you up. So, you know, it's no mistake that, just to circle this all back, that you have healed your thyroid, your throat chakra, and you now speak on stages in front of upwards of 20,000 people, right?
Mhm.
The correlation between what your soul came here to do, your Dharma, right? And following that, building it as your career. So would you say now that you are fully living in your Dharma, and would you like to share now how that is correlated to how you're feeling in your body?
Um, I think there's always room for growth, right? So we're always able to
Always
grow.
evolving. Yeah.
It's always evolving, but
Yeah.
100%, I'm so grateful. It sounds weird saying this, but I'm so grateful for the health challenges I had, because if I did not have them, I'd probably be stuck in that, or, that place where I felt trapped in my body, where I felt trapped in a job, where I felt trapped and not able to connect with where I wanted to go and what I wanted to create. And going through everything that I went through was a necessary part to be able to show other people, you if you feel trapped now, you don't have to stay there. There are ways to get out. It may not feel like it, but there are ways to get out. And so I do feel like I'm living in alignment with my purpose now. I feel like, like I get goosebumps. I get
Mhm.
goosebumps when I talk about it. And it's something that I feel so blessed to do, but I feel like it's something everybody can do. It's not, there's nothing unique and special about me. It is, everybody can do this if they just listen to what their soul is telling them and listen to what their body is telling them. So I'm so grateful for it, but there's always room for more. So I'm working on creating a couple of other projects that I love. I totally love horses, and I love spending time with horses. And now I'm transferring some of the energy work that I do to horses, which is super exciting. Um, and we'll see where that goes,
Yeah. Yes. And I want to flip something on its head really quick. You're so unique and special, and so is every person that's listening in, right? Like, you're so special and so unique. And if you're listening in, you are so special and so unique. And you're meant to follow what your unique soul's blueprint is. Like, the stuff that quote unquote makes you weird, that's the stuff that you came here to build from, to build your life around. Like, we're not meant to be normal. Normal means we're conforming to another person's version of reality, right? The cookie cutter versions of each other. We're not meant to be that. We're meant to build something very specific and in alignment with our soul. And it is often the things that bring us to our knees that we find a much better way to stand faster and to rebuild in a way that's in alignment with our soul, that we can then gift to someone else to say, what if you tried it this way?
Yeah.
Because this way actually really worked and these other 12 ways didn't. And then that's the fast roadmap to being like, oh my gosh, yes, you're my person. I would love to hear how you got to the place you're at today.
Yeah.
So,
Totally love that.
so powerful. I love this. Brandi, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I am positive that everyone who's tuning in is like, where are you hanging out? How can I learn more from you? So where are you hanging out and how can they learn more from you?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Brandi Murphy. And so that's where I am the most. I do have a website, brandimurphy.com, that talks a little bit about some of my coaching programs. They're always evolving though, so they're not always all listed.
Yeah.
But yeah, Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. And then just before we leave, I would love to hear your perspective. The shaman in me is like, we have to ask this question. Let's talk really quickly about the magic and the energy of horses. Like, I know that you do so much work with horses, and I have heard from so many of my mentors that they have a very unique and special blend of medicine.
Oh, they do.
And I would love to know your perspective on horses and the medicine that they provide. And yeah, just tell us more.
So horses are so magical creatures. And I actually started working with horses when I was going through my cancer treatment. It was such a shock to my system. I really went into a deep depression when I went from being perfectly healthy with cancer to feeling super sick without it, right? Like it was just crazy. So when I was going through my cancer treatment, really the only thing that brought me joy was being around horses. And there was a big horse farm behind my parents' house. And so I would go over there and take lessons. And I didn't understand it then, but just being around them was such a grounding, calming, peaceful energy that I just felt so much better when I was with them. So I started riding and totally loved it. And then when my kids were born, I got away from it from a while. But when my kids were born, I wanted them to have that exposure. And so I had them start riding lessons both when they were about 5 years old. And so we have 3 horses and we spend a lot of time with them and just they are kind of my therapist, right? When I'm grooming them and brushing them, it's just such a calming, peaceful energy. I've taught my kids that when they feel bad and they don't know how to articulate it, like my son Braden can get a little moody. He's, 11 and you can't always process all of those big emotions when you're
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
But I'll ask him if he wants to talk about it, and sometimes he doesn't. And then I'll say, let's go talk to Dr. Wyatt. Wyatt is his pony. And he'll just go stand heart to heart with Wyatt, right? So like he kind of hugs his neck and their hearts just kind of connect. And he'll just stand there for 5 or 10 minutes in silence. And I don't know what Wyatt says to him. I don't need to know what Wyatt says to him, but their hearts communicate. And he's a different kid when that
Mm.
session is over. He's just like so happy and at peace. And so horses can feel our energy. They know when we're being authentic. We cannot fool them. And so one of the things that I love to do with horses is when a horse isn't responding to conventional veterinary treatment. Usually there's some sort of underlying emotion, just like with us. They're very emotional beings, just like we are. So you can use even the emotion code and body code on horses, and there's no placebo effect with them. They don't understand what you're doing, but they just feel better when you help them release those emotions. I also use in my coaching program some bioresonance tools that will actually help to like see the frequency of all of their muscles and their bones and see, if there's anything out of alignment. So if they have a physical ailment that is not responding to traditional vet care, we can usually identify that there's an underlying emotion that needs to be released and then give them a frequency to help balance it. And when you do that for them, they feel so much better that it can also create a deeper bond with them and their rider, right? It like removes all the interference between the energy of the human and the rider when the horse feels good. Just like when we feel good, we connect with people better. So there's a lot of really great lessons there that removing that placebo effect really shows that the energy work works not just on people, but on animals that have no understanding of what you're doing. But when you see that them improve both physically and emotionally from doing a couple of sessions, it's really powerful.
Mm. I got very teary-eyed when you were talking about the heart-to-heart hug for 5 to 10 minutes. I'm telling you, like, even our children do that. We'll just I'm just very emotional about this, but he'll just walk up to me and place his heart on mine, and we'll just hug for 5 minutes, and it's so healing for both of us, and
Mhm.
so I just love that you're witnessing that medicine in horses and in your children, and that you're instilling that in them. So, wow, thank you so much for that. I knew there was a part of me that needed to hear that today. So,
Thank you for sharing.
yeah, Brandi, you are medicine. You are beautiful inside and out, and I am eternally grateful for all the wisdom that you brought into this space, for your gratitude for your own soul's journey and how you've really allowed that to translate into the medicine that you give back to humanity, a way of doing life differently that's more in alignment with their soul. So thank you from the depths of my soul for being here, for sharing your heart and your wisdom. And everyone who's listening in, I'm so grateful that you tuned in today and got some really beautiful magic in the space. She's so worth a follow, connecting into her energy and her soul. So I hope that you'll join us on that journey of just leaning further into all the things that she's bringing into humanity. So, Brandi, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Christina. I so appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Until next time.